Hello, it's Andy Prothero from PCR Global, just finishing up on an audit I've been doing. I'm currently in Erbil, and many will recognise that landmark as the fantastic the Divan Hotel. So I just wanted to talk briefly about security risk management, security risk assessment, and sort of the difference. So it's easy to understand when or recognize, I should say, when you're auditing security operators, security teams who understand the essence of risk as it stands from a security risk assessment sort of standpoint. So what do I mean by that? When you look at the security risk assessment, and it's a static document, it's the output. So the output is the risk assessment itself. When you actually start analysing it, the first thing you really want to be looking at is the threat. So when we think about this, the threat, that's not the risk, that's not the vulnerability, it's the threat. So that's basically the intent of the sort of, you could say, some people will say threat actor. So it's such a beautiful hotel, isn't it? Someone will say threat actor, i.e. the person or the group that's posing that threat against sort of that target. So you can work that threat out without really thinking about the vulnerability, really, because you're just focusing on what is the threat. So that threat assessment can be a separate activity and separate document to the risk assessment. So that's critical. So once you then have worked out the threat, so let's say now you've got the threat, then you should then be looking for, or people should be providing you then with the vulnerability against that threat. Here's the threat, this is the intent of the threat actor. Well, now you start looking internally, well, here is our vulnerability. And obviously the vulnerability from a threat that's a potential IED or suicide vest or inside a threat is going to be different from, let's just say, somebody marauding with a knife. There's going to be a different threat, there's going to be a different vulnerability, isn't it? So those two, so you could potentially be looking at two different documents. If you're then asking to see the risk assessment document, that should be the output of that threat assessment and vulnerability assessment. And if it isn't, then you've got cause to ask that question, why? Because what we've just talked about there is actually the risk assessment criteria, or the criteria, because that criteria goes into estimating the risk, which is then going to give you the outputs or the control measures. So we're looking at what is the threat. We're then looking at the vulnerability based on the sort of assets or the capability that we've got in sort of neutralising that threat, which is then going to give us our risk. So that's how it differs. And when you're auditing security teams who actually get that, that makes a massive difference. And when you know you're auditing a competent team, you can take that then to the next level as well. When you're auditing that security team who are actually when they go into that assessment analysis of the risk to come up with a risk assessment, do they then understand not just the criteria, but the biases that goes into that security making decision? So what I'm saying by that is there's going to be, you've got your bounded rationalities, you've got your various human biases, cognitive bias, attributive bias, all these things that we've got that we take into these situations, because we've got our own top-down processing and bottom-up processes. And that top-down processing is basically our previous exposure and understanding of risk. It's our knowledge, our experience, our expectation, and that's what people are going to call perception. They meet our bottom-up processes, our sight, sound, smells, and they meet in the middle, so we get our interpretation, and that's when we get to that decision. So when you know you're dealing with a high-level team, is one, they understand the difference between threat, vulnerability, and equals risk, but also then the importance of understanding the decision-making process going in to coming up with that statement of risk, because that's then going to determine if you need any additional controls. So that's it, really. I'm not going to say a waffle, because it's such an important subject, but you really can tell when you're dealing with a serious experienced team when they consider what I've just said. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay productive, and I'm looking forward to getting home to my best mate, Llewellyn. Thanks for watching.